I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about our decision making and where our decisions have led us and are still leading us. I'm at Africa Centre for Holistic Management, and I'm actually sitting on the road because at this time of year there's so much grass here that I can't actually walk off any further because the grass is too long, and also I might bump into elephants or lions or whatever might be out there. So if I'm on the road I can see what's behind me and I'm in a bit of a clearing. So I wanted to talk about where our decisions have led us, and I wanted to talk about the fact that globally our problems fall under social, economic and environmental headings, and they're increasing. So if our problems are global and they're increasing, it means that when it comes to solving them, nobody is getting it right. Now, every single thing on earth, every problem we're dealing with has been started by someone somewhere making a decision which has caused these knock-on consequences. And every issue, problem, anything we're dealing with right now can be traced back to a decision or a policy, which means our decisions are failing us, or the way we make decisions are failing us. And my father's a Zimbabwean ecologist who has dedicated his entire life to trying to find out why our decisions are causing increasing issues, and why our management has caused increasing land degradation over many thousands of years. And that's increasing more rapidly in the last 120 years or so. And he's developed a decision-making framework to guarantee that our decisions don't cause these unwanted knock-on consequences, because right now the way we all make decisions is we meet short-term objectives without considering the full or whole complexity of that decision in not just the short term but also the long term. So he's developed this decision-making framework that essentially makes it impossible for anyone to make an unsound decision or policy given their unique social, economic and environmental circumstances, because almost every human decision involves those three elements to consider. And I wanted to talk about a good example of the knock-on consequences of not testing for the full complexity of each decision when we make them. And it was back in the 1960s. My father was a lead ecologist here in Zimbabwe, and I think it was actually started earlier than that, and he was part of a team tasked with setting aside natural areas for national parks to protect our wildlife. And they chose the most beautiful biodiverse areas in the country, and what they did is to protect the wildlife. The government and this team of ecologists made the decision to protect wildlife by taking all the people in those areas out. So they took out the native people that were living along riverbanks, etc., the villages, and they wanted to protect the wildlife. So they unwittingly took out these people, which caused a social upheaval, financial and environmental, because they'd upset this environment and taken the people out. And then the consequences of our decisions aren't felt at the time, and they're invisible. So what my father noticed, and other people obviously, over the next few years, is that in these national park areas there began to be big land degradation. And they saw that it was being caused mainly by elephants, because there were a lot of elephants in these areas. So they put a team together to decide what to do, because now they thought they had too many elephants in these areas and that they were causing damage. So my father, again, was the lead ecologist on this decision, and he proved that the elephants were causing damage. And the next decision they made was the government decided, based on the research, that the elephants were causing damage, to cull. And over the next few years, they culled 40,000 elephant here in Zimbabwe. And again, you don't see the knock-on consequences of your decision at the time. So the government was all pat themselves on the back, job well done, move on. And my father was watching and observing the land, the health of it, the biodiversity. And he started to realize that it was getting worse, not better, without those elephants. And he was like, oh my God, we've made a mistake, we were wrong. And nobody else would admit that that was a mistake to cull 40,000 elephants. And it devastated him, quite frankly, and it's a mistake that he'll take to his grave. But the one good thing that came of it was that it made him dedicate his entire life to finding out what it is about our management that causes these things to happen. And so if we go back to the initial decision, because remember I said everything can be traced back to a human making a decision, yet we blame resources, so we blame elephants, but it was our decisions that started this, that caused these problems. So when we set aside the areas of the national park, we didn't take into account the full complexity of that decision. We had a short-term objective, we want to protect these areas, we'll take the people out. End of story, job done, pat on the back, move on. Then strange things started happening, etc. So what my father then realized is he's like, our decision to take out people from those areas, we had taken out the apex predator. An adult elephant's only predator is a human. Now humans predate upon elephants, all herding animals or whatever, but the biggest impact in that decision was the impact onto elephants of taking out their only predator. And if you take out a predator, an apex predator from any environment, it's called a trophic cascade. The environment collapses because it causes other animals to behave unnaturally. And I'm sure most of you have seen the video of the wolves of Yellowstone. Took the wolves away, the whole park started to collapse because the deer started to behave unnaturally. Put the wolves back, the whole thing regenerated. Now that's what we'd done. In essence, we'd taken out our wolves. We took out the humans, so we had hundreds of thousands of elephants behaving unnaturally. They stopped being bunched together and moving naturally. They started to spread out, to stay longer in areas. They were overgrazing the grasses, so they started to cause damage. But it was our decision that had caused the elephants to behave unnaturally. And then we used another reductionist decision towards that problem and said, let's cull, which caused even greater damage because we now have new ecological insights that show us so clearly that there's a symbiotic relationship between these big herds of animals and predators and the health of the land. So do you see, we are using the same decision-making process that's causing our problems to try and solve them, which creates more problems. So instead of stopping and saying, whoa, our decision caused the elephants to behave unnaturally, we need to adjust that. We've blamed the elephants, not our management. So we now have these new ecological and management insights which stop these things happening. And the holistic decision-making framework which my father developed, which makes us test for the short and long-term social, economic, and ecological complexity of each decision simultaneously, short and long term. So we are guaranteed that the right decision for the decision maker will become apparent and float to the top. So you're always looking for the best possible decision, and you're always testing short and long term social, financial, and environmental complexity. So we need to stop blaming our resources. We blame fossil fuels, we blame elephants, we blame livestock. It's the same story with livestock. We blame livestock for causing land degradation, but it's our management that we're managing livestock in a way that is damaging, the same as we're managing wildlife in a way that is causing these upsets of the cycles of nature, of the natural cycles of nature. So we now have the solutions to stop doing this. It's a very simple decision-making framework that guarantees we're not just looking at short-term objective versus long-term consequence. So we don't have too many elephants. We have too many elephants behaving unnaturally. We need to make decisions in a way that includes all that complexity that we can never predict, and regenerate our habitats and get those cycles of nature back, which includes humans. We are not separate to nature. We are entirely dependent on our environment. Everything we use or consume or manufacture on Earth is provided by nature, which immediately tells us our decisions are the things we manage are social, economic, and ecological, and that we are not separate from our environment. So I hope this has given a little bit of insight into how our decisions cause these knock-on consequences, and that the long-term consequences are not felt at the time, and they are invisible and often felt a long time later or far away. So we don't associate how we made the decision with the consequences. And I'll be doing another couple of videos of shorter things, of examples of reductionist decisions versus if the decision had been put through the guiding, filtering process of the holistic management framework, it never would have passed, because it's a testing decision-making process that makes sure the right decision will come to the top automatically in whatever unique social, financial, and ecological circumstances that decision is being made in. Thank you.